These are notes 6.3, independent agencies. So we're looking at the portion of the federal democracy that is independent of the departments of the bureaucracy or the executive branch. So the purpose of these independent agencies um, were created by Congress. So Congress created these agencies with the purpose of them being standalone. Most of them are topic based, so they're standalone because they have one particular topic or area of society that they deal with, and it is relatively independent of executive departments. Examples include um, NASA, the FDA, the FDIC. All of these have particular roles that they play in um, implementing federal laws, but they're not under the federal government, as in like the Department of Justice or the Attorney General's office or the Secretary of State. Um, they're independent. The reason behind them was basically to protect them from politics. But it can also, some argue that it can make them more influenced by interest groups because they don't have the accountability of elected officials. Now, they are appointed and confirmed, they are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, but they still can be heavily influenced by an interest group. There's 150 of these independent agencies, over 150 really, overall, and it can be from something very small, simple that could have a few employees to something like the Social Security Administration, that is one of the largest independent agencies, and this agency employs like 65,000 employees, to like a very small, like the Indian Gaming Commission that doesn't have very many employees and very few offices. There's three types of independent agencies. Okay, so we'll look at this little diagram over here. So you can see like executive office of the president. Some of you guys will be talking about that on tomorrow on Thursday when um, you go through your presentation. Some of you will be talking about the cabinet departments. Those that have national security will talk about defense. And then we have some that are over here with Congress. They're independent executive agencies like the CIA, NASA. And then there's independent regulatory commissions. They're like the FCC, which is like it regulates communications, regulates the internet. The SEC, which is the Securities Exchange Commission, um, and that regulates the stock market. And then we have this example down here that is under Congress and the president, and those are called government corporations. So they run just like a corporation. They fulfill some type of public service or some type of role like that, but they do make an income, although that income is kicked back into the corporation. So here's another example of kind of what we were looking at before. Independent executive agencies, they're non-cabinet agencies with very particular specialized functions. So they don't have a cabinet position like the other ones. NASA, the EPA, the FDA, the Peace Corps, Office of Personnel Management, basically like the human resources for the federal government. Independent regulatory commissions, they're the ones that regulate, typically only dealing with the economy. So what, there is a few that aren't just exactly like that, but like the FCC, the SEC is probably the ones that we know best. Federal Reserve System, which is where we get the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Then you have government corporations. They have businesses, but they're financed through public funds. They also have congressional and presidential oversight. And there's some examples there. I said FDIC, and I guess it's in the other because it is a corporation. I didn't think about that. U.S. Postal Service, Amtrak, the TVA. Some of those are the ones we would know. So independent executive agencies. Let's go through these a little bit. They play a major role in Americans' lives. So, like many Americans will see or deal with them, it will affect them in some way. Why is that important? Well, the FDA ensures safety of food and medicine. If you haven't taken, if you didn't learn this in the American history class you took, we talk about the era of the muckrakers and other writers that wrote about how bad food safety was in the late 1800s. Also, what's really important today is medicine safety, making sure that people are labeling medicines correctly with the correct warnings and, you know, with the right active ingredients. That's all really important to our lives. The EPA protects the environment. It's the idea behind it was created in the 1970s with some of the issues like Love Canal. This small town um, ended up with some major pollutions in their water source, and their children became so sick, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong, and it ended up that corporation was dumping chemicals into their water source. So the EPA was kind of a reactionary to that, and they fulfill all kinds of more of like, even though they're an agency, they also kind of do a lot more regulatory, I guess you could say. Some of the more less known agencies that you don't hear of every day, they have much smaller budgets and they don't impact your life as immediately, are things like the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee, which basically is people that decide who's going to be on a stamp, what the design of a stamp's going to be. Sometimes they have these big reveals where they'll, reveal the new stamp to commemorate, somebody's birthday or 100 years since whatever. Um, and like I said, these aren't very known, and you probably haven't heard of them. The Indian Gaming Commission is another example of an independent executive agency. It plays an important role for a small, very particular issue or idea, or in this case, a particular business. Um, if we take a look a little bit more topical things as far as executive agency, we have the National Science Foundation, and there's a lot of these, but these are just some of the examples that your book gave, and examples to kind of illustrate how the executive branch plays a role. Many new technologies came from the National Science Foundation. Obviously, they employ scientists. Um, Things like 3D printing, barcodes, that we use, use for so many things today. Um, we look at a lot of these technologies that they created starting really in the 70s, and we can see them in place today in our lives. Like I said, like 3D printing is definitely a significant one. Barcoding, other computer technologies, DNA has made a huge difference in crime solving. That was really expanded through the National Science Foundation. NASA is well known. They obviously are responsible for exploring space, not only exploring space, but also um, uh, doing a lot of different tests in space, doing a lot of different tests on the International Space Station, maintaining the International Space Station. They're responsible for many research breakthroughs. So the heart monitors and actually some of the heart devices that are used today in hospitals were originally used in the 60s and 70s to actually monitor astronauts to make sure that their vitals were okay. Well, then we realized that that would be really important, especially when somebody's in surgery, to be able to monitor them as close, or be able to use them for life-saving measures. Office of Personnel Management is another example of an independent executive agency. They're basically the HR department for the federal government. The federal government is the nation's largest employer. No one in the United States employs more people across the country than the federal government. There's 2.8 million civilians employed by the federal government and 1.4 million military personnel. So if you look at that overall, that's pretty significant. Um, Office of Personnel Management, they can do a variety of things, everything from enacting benefits and helping with benefits to setting like the pay rates. So a lot of the federal government is set up on like what's called like a GS scale, or and it like a GS5 is a certain thing and a GS7 is something else. So they're responsible for maintaining some of those scales. Very, very thrilling agency, obviously. If we look at some of the things that NASA helped develop, um, ultrasound machines were first used in space. NASA satellites do things like measure the ozone layer. Um, there's a lot of emergency food packs that we put in our backpacks today, or that you can buy from Cabela's, were first on the space shuttle. Um, they actually eventually like started the whole idea of cordless drills by trying to drill on Mars in the 60s. And now cordless drill seems so a part of life today, but it wasn't back then. And then the most exciting thing is memory foam. Memory foam was actually developed by NASA to make sure that when the shuttle landed, it would cushion the impact. And then somebody fell asleep on one and was like, "This is great." No, not really. But really, yeah, the memory foam was actually developed by NASA. Independent executive agencies are also important in a historical sense. So historically, the spoil system was in place in the 1800s. What is the spoil system? It's basically giving government jobs to the political supporters. So people that supported someone's campaign, they got jobs. Their family members got jobs. You gave money to someone's campaign, you got a government job. It didn't matter if you were qualified for that job. It just mattered that you supported it. And that's the whole idea here of this cartoon that shows the government cake, um, and it obviously every person wants a piece of the cake, and obviously the cake is the government job. When President Garfield was fatally shot by someone that did not get the federal job that he thought he deserved because he supported him in his campaign, many people began to call for an end of the spoil system. A lot of people thought the spoil system was a good thing because it encouraged more supporters, encouraged more political participation. But others felt like it actually just led to more corruption and problems. And once we have a president die, because someone decided, they didn't get their way, we actually had the passage of the Pendleton Service Act. It set up a merit system. You had to be hired based on qualifications, not political affiliation. What this means is a lot of federal jobs today actually become pretty competitive. Um, Now, that's not to say after people get the jobs, they're the most efficient employees, but to get a federal job, if it's under the merit system, there has to be some way of having qualifications. This could be through a test. This could be through evaluation of even like things from writing samples to giving people like a certain set of um, task and they having to accomplish it. There has to be some way of basing their qualifications for the federal job, and most of the time it's a test, um, some type of test that they take in order to ensure the person is qualified for the job. It does make a federal job today more competitive than some other jobs. And this is the note 6.3 part 1.